God's chosen ones. Heaven just nodded in approval. That silent move was obedience. You almost went through with it. The text, the deal. The thing you were about to say yes to, even though your spirit whispered no. And then, out of nowhere, a verse showed up. A stranger smiled. A door closed. A peace settled in your chest you couldn't explain. That wasn't a coincidence. That was God winking. You didn't just walk away from the wrong thing. You walked toward alignment, and heaven just nodded in approval. You did the right thing, even when no one saw it, even when it cost you, even when you almost doubted it later. But God didn't forget. He just confirmed it quietly. If this feels like your confirmation, type 777 in the comments, because this wasn't random. The wink wasn't small, it was sacred. You didn't get a standing ovation, no confirmation email, no fireworks, just silence. And yet, something inside you knew. That door that closed, that urge you resisted, that conversation you didn't have. It felt like nothing at the time. But now, looking back, it was everything. Because the moment you walked away, a verse popped up. A stranger said something. A stillness came over your chest like a blanket. And deep in your spirit, you felt it. That was God. That was Him. God, did I do the right thing? Was that really you? Or just me overthinking? Heaven heard that question, and instead of thunder, He sent a wink. Instead of shouting, He nodded. Not in anger, not in warning, but in holy approval. You obeyed without applause. You let go without reward. You chose the hard thing and nobody saw it, but God did. And now He's responding with a sacred, still message. You passed the test.
I saw your heart.
And yes, you did the right thing. This video is for those who feel invisible in their obedience. Those who didn't get the miracle yet, but still stayed faithful. Those who needed a whisper of reassurance before they gave up. This is your confirmation. This is your wink from heaven. Chapter 1. The decision that made no sense. You prayed for a sign, but all you got was silence. No confirmation, no clarity. Just a deep pull in your chest telling you, walk away. It didn't make sense. They were kind. The offer looked good. The timing was almost perfect, but something in you whispered, not this, not yet, not them. And against everything you could rationalize, you obeyed. You didn't post about it. You didn't even explain it to your friends. Because how do you explain a no that came with no thunder, no prophecy, no lightning in the sky? All you had was a trembling peace and a quiet decision that cost you comfort. But you made it anyway. Days passed, no reward, no breakthrough. And part of you started to wonder, did I mess up? Did I just lose something God sent? But now, here's what heaven is saying. Softly, clearly, lovingly. No, you didn't lose it. You passed the test. That moment wasn't about gain. It was about alignment. God wasn't testing your logic. He was weighing your spirit. And though it made no sense in the natural, in the spirit, it was a yes, a holy echo that said, they trust me more than they trust their own understanding. And heaven smiled. What if the decision that made you feel behind was the one that actually put you ahead? What if the delay you created by walking away was actually the shortcut into divine timing? You didn't miss out. You got in sync. You didn't reject opportunity. You accepted divine instruction. There are decisions that look foolish to man, but ring like a bell in the spirit realm, and God hears it every time. The ones you make in private, the ones no one celebrates, the ones that hurt on the way out but heal you in the long run. This was that kind of decision. Heaven recorded it. God smiled. And today, He's sending you this message as proof. It's chapter 2. When God speaks in glances, not thunder. You were expecting a sign, but all you got was stillness. No burning bush. No angel with a scroll. No shaking room or goosebumps. Just a perfectly timed verse, a text that came before your tear could fall, a peace that didn't match the chaos around you, and something in your spirit whispered, that was him. You thought God would speak in fire, but he came in a glance, a divine nudge, a flicker of peace, a pull to pause or move or let go, not with volume, but with vision, because God doesn't always yell. Sometimes he winks. The world says, if it's not loud, it's not real. But the Spirit says, if you know me, you'll recognize my whisper. And that's the thing. The deeper your relationship with God, the quieter he often speaks, not to confuse you, but to draw you closer. When Elijah waited to hear from the Lord, he saw wind. He felt an earthquake. He saw fire, but God was in none of them. Then came the whisper. And that's when Elijah covered his face. Because even the prophets knew the presence of God doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it simply arrives. What if you've been waiting for a sign, but God already gave you 3? The delay, the stranger's compliment, the sudden clarity at 3 a.m. What if those were the winks you missed? You've asked, God, why won't you speak to me? But he has, just not in thunder. He spoke through that delay. He spoke through your dream. He spoke when you almost said yes, but couldn't. God doesn't need volume. He speaks in patterns. He speaks through peace. He speaks through what your spirit catches, not just what your ears hear or watching for the wink. If you slow down long enough, you'll realize he's been answering you this whole time, not with explanation, but with confirmation. You're not crazy. You're calibrated. That flicker of peace, that sudden scripture, that moment you couldn't explain, that was God looking right at you. Chapter 3. Confirmation without clarity why God doesn't explain everything. You wanted a roadmap. You got a whisper. You asked for a prophecy. You got a strange peace. You cried for details. God handed you a decision. And now you're here, half trusting, half trembling, still wondering if that was confirmation. Why do I still feel unsure? God's love will confirm you, but his silence will build you. We don't follow him because he explains. We follow because he's faithful. The Israelites didn't get a plan. They got a cloud. Abraham didn't get details. He got a direction. Go to the land I will show you. Genesis 12:1. You're not alone if you've been asking, God, why didn't you give me more? Why did I have to obey? Without understanding. Because here's the deeper truth. God doesn't owe you clarity. He promises presence. That stirring in your chest. That push to apply, to stay quiet, to walk away. That's confirmation. Not because you understood it, but because your spirit aligned before your mind caught up. God doesn't need your logic. He needs your yes. What if the confusion isn't punishment, but protection? What if God is hiding the full picture? Because if you saw it all, you'd run the wrong direction. He confirmed it in spirit. Now you must follow in faith. And maybe that's the real confirmation. That even without clarity, you still obeyed. By faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called, and he went out, not knowing where he was going. He didn't know the outcome, he just knew the voice. And so do you. You've waited for answers, but God has been watching your response. The way you chose quiet obedience when everything inside screamed for logic. The way you trusted the peace more than you trusted the plan. And the way you followed the whisper when thunder never came. That's not weakness. That's maturity. That's not confusion. That's calibration. You didn't miss the confirmation. You just mistook it for a feeling, when really it was divine direction. You don't need more clarity. You need more trust, because God never promised to explain the journey, only to finish it with you. Chapter 4. Heaven is tracking your faith even when you're not sure. You thought no one saw it. That quiet moment you said yes with shaking hands. That silent drive home after obeying the voice no one else could hear. The day you chose peace over closure. Faith over facts, surrender over safety. No crowd, no confirmation, just a whisper in your chest saying, keep walking. And you did. Not because you were sure, but because you were called. The world records outcomes. Heaven records obedience. People track results. God tracks resistance to doubt. You didn't see angels take notes, but they did. You didn't see heaven's seal, but it's there. Because in the courts of God, faith in the fog weighs more than praise in the light. The widow's 2 coins. Jesus saw her, a woman who gave what looked like nothing. Others gave in abundance. She gave all she had, and heaven said, that's greatness. What you offered felt small, but it cost you everything, and God recorded it. What if your tear-streaked prayer in the hallway was louder in heaven than 1,000 sermons? What if the moment you almost gave up is the moment the angels leaned in and said, wait, they're still believing. They're still moving. You didn't fake faith. You fought for it. You weren't confident. You were courageous. You didn't have all the answers, but you still said, God, I'm trusting you anyway. And that is the kind of faith heaven rewards. It's full of prayers that had no words, decisions no one clapped for, fastings no one knew about, seeds sown in silence, faith that looked like foolishness. And now God says, I saw every step, I counted every yes, and I never forgot your name. You may feel behind. You may feel unseen, but the truth, heaven has tracked your every move, and you're further than you think. Chapter 5. You didn't miss it, you passed the test. You kept wondering, did I miss it? Did I walk away too soon? Did I stay too long? Did I mess up my moment? But today, heaven is answering softly, not with a rebuke, but with a nod. You didn't miss it, you passed it. God doesn't give you a study guide. He gives you a moment, one you don't recognize until you've walked through it. And afterward, you realize the silence wasn't punishment. It was a setup. Because the test wasn't, can you win? It was, will you trust me when you don't understand? Deuteronomy 8. To the wilderness exam, and you shall remember the whole way, how the Lord your God led you these 40 years in the wilderness, that he might humble you, testing you to know what was in your heart. It wasn't about direction. It was about devotion. You weren't being delayed. You were being discerned. And guess what? You passed, not because you were perfect, but because you didn't stop walking. Not because you had the answers, but because you kept saying yes. Not because it made sense, but because it made your faith grow. What if the moment you thought was failure was actually graduation? What if you've been mourning a lost opportunity that God is actually preparing to resurrect better, bigger, and more aligned? You didn't miss the mark. You hit the heart of heaven. You didn't fail the test. You fulfilled your assignment. And now the silence is lifting. The answers are coming. The doors are opening because tests end. And this one, you just passed it. The yes you gave in secret is about to echo in rooms you didn't even apply to. The obedience no one noticed is about to carry weight you can't yet measure. Because God doesn't reward noise. He rewards faithfulness. And yours has been found true. So take a deep breath. Shake the shame off. Loosen your grip on what could have been. Because heaven just issued your result. Well done, my faithful one. Now walk through the next door. God saw what you did in secret. You didn't imagine it. That quiet confirmation. That strange peace after obedience. That was heaven nodding. Not every divine reward begins with a trumpet. Some begin with a whisper and a wink. Yes, that was me. And yes, you did the right thing. You were never walking alone. You were walking ahead. You didn't miss the moment. You became the moment. Because faith is often uncelebrated. Obedience is often unseen. And sacred alignment rarely comes with applause. But heaven never misses what your heart does in secret. You said yes when no one understood. You walked away when the world said stay. You obeyed when your soul was still shaking. And now, heaven is confirming what your spirit already knew. You did the right thing. So exhale, unclench your chest. Let peace take up space again. That door didn't close because you were wrong. It closed because God was protecting what's right. What if your hidden obedience was the loudest sound in heaven this year? What if your quiet yes became the reason God is about to open doors no man can shut? Type 777 in the comments if this word met you where no one else could. Drop your city and time zone. Let's see where the spiritually awake are rising around the world. And if you're giving today even a mustard seed of faith, write this with your gift. God, I saw your wink, and I say yes again, because this isn't just a confirmation, it's your next instruction.